Islam, please go reach out to them and find out how they live their day-to-day lives, and that's what the Islam is.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. Thank you. And I want to ask Dr. Akbar, I want to ask your wife, where is she? Can you please stand up? Mrs. Akbar, can you stand up? Where is she? Now please answer that gentleman with a Remember, in Saudi Arabia you can't drive a car, so please explain to him whether it represents you or not.
I agree with my husband.
Now we'll have peace at home. No, my friend, Saudi Arabia doesn't represent, maybe it represents Islam to you, but not to us. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed. Please.
Thank you so much for your presentation. So I was wondering, just coming from my personal point of view, I feel like as a minority, either religious group or ethnic, a lot of young people who see a cycle of violence, either verbal violence or physical violence, can have a lot of anger. So how do we channel that anger into something productive and create dialogue? I know that you've traveled to many countries, you've seen diverse communities of Muslims. So how do you think we could change anger and have better dialogue with people?
This is a great question, great question. And I have talked to a lot of young Muslims. And you can sense the anger. And they don't hear all this dialogue and let's make peace. They don't. They think it's a sellout. So I would challenge them. I would say, now look, 4 students, young men, Muslims, went from Virginia about 10 years back with the intention of fighting alongside the Taliban against the Americans. So effectively, they were being traitors to their own nation. They were Americans. You know, they were angry. We had to go and express our anger against America. So I said, why don't you channel your energy and go to the same country? They went to Pakistan, go to Afghanistan. I said, go to Pakistan, work in a hospital, work in a village, start a school, channel that energy for the poor people in the Muslim world. They're desperately needed. But the idea of crossing into Afghanistan and creating problems for the Afghans and the Americans and yourselves and your families back home is madness. So we have to talk to them. See, too often we simply reject them because we live with stereotypes. You know, all Muslims are terrorists, all they're waiting to blow themselves up. You know, this kind of nonsense you hear all the time. If we could talk to them, you prevent the next round of 9/11. And you prevent the future tragedies that may happen by nipping them in the bud now. So I would spend a lot of time, the leaders of the community, in talking and really, in a sense, directing the young generation.
Another question. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to say, since 1999, I read your book on postmodernism. I believe it was in 1999 or 2000.
Yes.
You wrote that. It was fabulous. And I quote you in one of my works, the papers I'm going to publish. So,
Is your mom here?
yes, I went all the way back home.
Salaam, thank you very much. Do you want to answer that young man there?
I studied in St. Joseph Convent School in Karachi.
So please tell him that, because in Saudi Arabia they do this, and the Muslim world they don't have. St. Joseph's Convent is a female school run by the nuns with a big church there, wide open and respected. No one will touch it. Yes.
Please.
So, can you talk about the fact that there's this whole generation, which I'm part of, the born or raised Muslims who are making a huge difference, who are kind of not from here or there.
Yeah.
Even though I know in Pakistan, there's a westernization, but they don't understand this milieu. And 9/11 happened, the pressure that we have, like we're white and we're brown. We're Muslim, we're a Western Muslim. I'm a Western Muslim woman. That has never happened in the history of Orientalism. So
That's a great observation, because this is exactly what we heard as we traveled.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is that immigrants, Muslim immigrants especially living in the West, are seen as immigrants here in America. They'll say, oh, you're from Turkey or Pakistan or wherever. You're not American. No, we're American. We are citizens. We live here. We love America. No, you're not really American. When they go home for a holiday, then the local people there will say, you're not really Turkish anymore, Pakistani anymore. You're American. So no, we are still Pakistani, on hard side, but no, you're not. You've been corrupted by the West. So this was told to me by so many many Muslims living with. In Germany, for example, the Turks have this problem very intensely. You know, the Turks are a huge population and very influential, and they're very close to Germany. And they say every year we go home, and the Turks, they don't accept us. They say, you're no longer Turk, you're German. And the Germans, they of course riot against the Muslims. So it's a dilemma, and it means that something has failed. Either you're not fully integrated in America, which means there's still some doubt in some people's minds, or that the people in your country are not accepting you anymore because they're seeing you compromise. So it means there's an incompleteness that you need to complete. And it's not your mom's problem, it'll be your problem because you're the generation that has to now take this argument forward and really allow us that integration and that assimilation which must come. Because if it doesn't come, then you know where separation has led to in Western societies. You take an example from Germany. Separation is dangerous, and in time when you have hatred against a minority, you begin to demonize it, you begin to call it names, you say they're vermin, they're rats, they're this, that. Next you know there's violence. Now in order to avoid it, we should act now. And in order to avoid it, you, the Muslim leaders, must be much more aggressively active in integrating and building bridges. So I wish you good luck.
Maybe.
I think I have more of a comment and then a question. Standing in front of my dearest brother here, respected, wonderful job by explaining everything. As a co-founder of Interfaith for the last 13 years in my beautiful Muncie community that I call it home for more than 33 years, we gather all religion, all 7 religion, and we choose a topic, whether it's peace or justice, whatever topic we choose for the last 13 years, and we give a chance to each representation from congregation, religion, 5 minutes, and they can now talk about the same topic. It seems like we're repeating ourselves. And it's our blessing. The religions are good. It's the people who take the direction they choose to take. And Saudi is one of the examples. I just had this conversation in the Academy for the Community. I was on the panel, and they were saying, Saudis representing Muslim. I said, no, Saudis, our holy land is there, happens to be there, but no, they're not representing Islam for all of us. And Islam means peace and just and understanding and caring for our community, not only just going and praying, but our community means a lot to us, and we're here to make a light in this world where God brought us to choose. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bibi. Tamir, please. Tamir, please.
Last night, you briefly mentioned religious freedom. You talked about justice. And tonight you spoke of Benjamin Franklin. I would like to know if you recall this statement that Benjamin Franklin made in reference to religious freedom for all people. And in that statement somewhere he said, even a Muslim. Do you recall that statement or
The statement from Benjamin Franklin about religious freedom.
What's the question?
Could you recall that and say a word about Benjamin Franklin's view of religion?
Yes, Benjamin Franklin, again, he's in this book. Please, if you have time, if you have a bit of spare time, you're inclined to read about America, get hold of Journey into America, because we have big chunks about the founding fathers. There's a marvelous story about Benjamin Franklin. And Imam, I want you to listen. Can you hear me? There was an incident in Pennsylvania where some white settlers went berserk and slaughtered Native Americans. They butchered them. And then they blamed the Native Americans. They said they went wild and they tried to kill us. In a brutal way. And those Native Americans were not even free. They were prisoners. They were locked up, they were prisoners, and they were just taken out and butchered. And Benjamin Franklin, I really admire this man. He wrote a scathing report. And he said, had these been prisoners under the time of Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, they would have been safe and alive, because he would have never allowed prisoners or individuals who were not suspect or criminals to be harmed, because that was his law. That's Benjamin Franklin.
Thank you.
Another question? Yes, sir.
I think one quick comment as far as my experience about the sister who asked. I think we have one problem with maybe not only Muslim but any other community. We psychologically, we have to feel. The main thing is that we don't feel sometimes, the people who come, that we belong to this country. And we should be, because that's what religion says. We have to have a 100% faith and defense of this country. And if you do that, then you feel they're good and you will be accepted good. Sometimes we, psychologically, people have that problem. My one question was that, I think for both Muslim and our American audience, like, you know, for the Muslim should be told, this is our time, especially after Mr. Trump, you know, go back home. But we need to tell, I mean, also America, to tell Muslim that we are not the only one. Catholic, Jews, Mormons, Black, Indians, what happened to them? To remind our American brothers and sisters in general, because they're talking about civilization. So remind them of their history, of our history, that this thing has happened. And now, Muslims should be not to give up. So there's a lot of good Americans, and we have to be with them, peaceful, loving people. We have to be together for the humanity. I think that will help.
Wonderful power couple, Dr. Sabir and his brilliant wife, mashallah, both of them. We're very proud of you.
Another question? Yes, sir. Alton?
So a lot of your stories seem to be about both Americans but also Islam. So I mean, and how it is okay to be both Muslim and American at the same time. Could you talk a little bit more about, and then we heard some generational differences. And right now when we see in terms of the Muslims in the US, we see that actually it's middle class and upper middle class. So socioeconomically, Muslims are doing very well. But it's still like as it's after 9/11, there's a lot of cultural bias and stereotype. Can you talk about the different ways in which the generations now are changing, and what can you say to the youngest generation who are now our college students, who are now who've been raised in this country? That's the first, you know, they might not even have gone back to Pakistan or somewhere else.
Professor Elton, that's a great comment. In fact, remember I'm squeezing a book about 500 pages into half an hour. So all this is discussed in great detail, based not only on interviews, but on statistics, on surveys. So this is an academic study. So we interview hundreds of people and then come to conclusions. You're absolutely right, there's a generation problem. Among Muslims, here are the problems. You know, I don't want to give a rosy picture. And Michael, you're looking at your watch, you end with this.
Oh, we're still time.
We have generational problems. I'm talking about the Muslim community. So very often, and this is shared by other communities, the younger generation does not always follow the example of the older generation. So you have tension. And of course, the mother and daughter, they are an exception. वो सही है कि नहीं? मुझे बताएं कहीं सही कि नहीं? So here you have one problem, right across the board. So the parents will say to the girl, you can't wear a skirt with that short hem. You can't. You can't go dating. You can't smoke a cigarette. All these are issues within the Muslim, not only the Muslim community. Then you have a problem of leadership. Muslims love to be leaders. Everyone wants to be imam. I lead the prayer. They don't want to be the ordinary soldier. They want to be the general. So that creates problems because you have so many institutions. You'll set up your mosque. Your neighbor won't like it, then you'll set up your own mosque. And immediately you have tension. Second problem. Third problem, there's still a lack of unity among Muslims. So you'll have Muslims from Pakistan, Muslims from the Arab world, Muslims from the converts, and they're clashing all the time. Which kind of Islam? Which should we project? Do we do it on merit or do we do it on money? Should the most influential Muslim, some rich Arab or rich Pakistani, should he be the president of the community because he's the richest? So members of the younger generation, Dr. Elton, you talked about the younger generation, They don't accept that. They don't want favoritism and nepotism. They want meritocracy, another source of tension. And finally, the younger generation, I find, feels, behaves and acts American. They're born here. It's their country. They may be slightly uncomfortable at times, but this is a great country. It's a great country to be an American. Their parents are still in transition. And very often I hear from older Muslims a certain nostalgia. Even though there may be chaos at home. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, these are examples. People have come here as refugees. And yet they feel nostalgic. That's human nature. You feel nostalgic about the noises, the sights, the sounds, the foods of that land. The younger generation has not experienced that. And finally, and this is again a generation thing, the older generation will listen to songs, and in Pakistan, paradoxically, very often they listen to Indian songs, movies from there. Or they'll pretend they say, oh, this is an enemy country, but they'll still listen to the song. To the younger generation, all that doesn't mean anything because they are very different people in a different culture. So all this Dr. Elton has discussed in great detail in the book. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ahmed? We still have time for another question. We're going to keep you working here just for another few minutes. Ahmed, please.
This is more of a comment than a question.
Yes,
Since
please,
we started-
please,
since we
make your
started
comment.
the conversation about, I think one of the things that we, in larger societal context, we miss with the Muslim community is that it's a normal tension of immigrant community trying to settle and assimilate within the larger community. It's not an Islamic issue. It might present itself with certain religious practice or cultural aspect. So the reminder to the larger community, the conversations that I try to have within the community about the behind the label, who stands behind the label. The reminder to the larger community is that if the reception that that minority that's trying to assimilate is having is you don't belong, it keeps creating, it furthers that friction. Now the friction would exist at home between a father and a son or a mother and a daughter within the family generation, immigrant versus this is how I grew up, this is different, it's scary, there's a lot for me to assimilate, to understand. But also at the same time, when the child goes out in the larger context, and I think if we talk about some of the terrorist activities that we've seen within Europe, some of the examples, a lot go back to the fact that they were told, you're never Belgian enough, you're never French enough, born and raised within the country. So we have to remind ourselves within a larger context that this is a group, regardless, Muslim or whatever their religious background is, that's trying to assimilate, and there's a lot of tension that happens within that natural progression. And if we open arms and we welcome, then we have a greater, stronger society. If we don't, we create a segment of the community that's always going to have that tension within the larger society.
Thank you for your comment, Ahmed. There's a very insightful comment, thank you. And we pray for Noura and your kids because that's the future. Now I'll end, whether Michael likes it or not, I'll end with this comment that we all have to bear our crosses. When I was a very distinguished fellow at Cambridge, a fellow at Cambridge is called a Don. And a Don there doesn't mean the Don in America with the mafia. It's a big title. And I'd appear on television, I'd do a lot of media work, and I'd come back to my college to go to the Porter's Lodge to pick up my mail. I've done a big TV show, I've come back to Cambridge, I go to the Porter's Lodge, and invariably I'd get an anonymous note. I'd get some typed letters saying, wonderful, we appreciate what you're doing. But I'd also get an anonymous note saying, go home, you black bastard. How would I react? Ahmed, I'd just smile. I'd say, he's just an ignorant idiot. And I'd walk out and throw away the note. So we have to face that and face it with a smile. It doesn't mean anything. If someone calls me a black bastard, I'm just proud of it. I'll say, yeah, I'm a black bastard. I am from Asia, so I'm technically a black bastard. And I don't mind. So if I don't mind, it's not going to hurt me. But that person is ignorant and he needs to improve his knowledge of my culture and my society. And I'll help him do that.
Let's say thank you to Dr. Ahmed.